Welcome to the Deadly Art of Survival podcast, where today we are interviewing Shidoshi Nathan Ingram. Today he's going to be telling us a little about his past and how he got started himself into the martial arts world. Let's get started. All right, so the first question is, how did you get started in martial arts?
I got started in martial arts in 1968 because of a friend of mine, David Fernandez, that was studying martial arts. We were about 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, and we were both in junior high school, I believe the seventh grade.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to my house with a uh, karate uniform on, and my mother thought he was in his pajamas, and she woke me up and told me she thinks my friend was losing his mind because he came to the house in pajamas. Because back then, not too many people knew what karate really was.
Right.
Just a few. Karate wasn't very popular then, but the people that knew what karate was all about really respected it. And so David Fernandez, my friend, is the one that started me in karate. Went to his school on East Broadway, downtown Manhattan, right outside of Chinatown,
Mm-hmm.
and began studying with our instructor, no, I'm sorry, Angel Crespo Sensei, a Philippine gentleman,
Right.
and trained with him for about 2 years. And then that's how my karate career began.
Wow. Okay. Now, how is training in your area different from training in your era? Sorry, how is training in your era different from training in today's era back then?
The big difference in when we trained back then, it was probably a lot, I would have to say, a lot more intense. We were able to get away, our instructors were able to get away with a lot more then than what instructors can get away with now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was brutal, and and it's probably because there weren't any social media, no Facebooks. We didn't have a lot of distractions that the kids have now. Remember, there was no cell phones, there was
Right.
no um, no computers, there was
No
no cable
tablets.
TV, there was no tablets whatsoever. These things wasn't even thought about. No, we didn't even have call waiting on our phones or anything. You know, if you was outside, you want to make a phone call, you had to use the phone booth. That was a phone that they had on the outside that you used, and you had to pay for it. So we didn't have all the distractions that the kids and the people have now. So whatever we got into it really hard. We stayed consistent. We did a lot, and and I think that is what made us more durable and what made us focus more. And the discipline came in from that because we spend so many hours training.
Right.
Back then, it wasn't like 1 hour class or a 45-minute class. Your class was 2 to 3 hours straight. There was no breaks. We didn't have any water bottles, so you couldn't bring a water bottle with you. You had to go to the fountain and you had to ask permission to go to the fountain to drink some water.
Wow.
Or you went to the sink in the bathroom and you drank water out the sink with front on in your hand after doing hundreds and hundreds of push-ups. So I think that was what was different about our era, that we were able to train harder because the instructors were more about discipline, and so
Right.
were the parents. Then parents were more tougher on their children than what the parents are now. Um, the parents then allowed the children to be disciplined by the school teachers, by the instructors, by the coaches, and we got disciplined. You went from being disciplined at home, from discipline in your dojo or your baseball team, your basketball team, your football team, whatever you got into. Or the kids back then got into it very heavy and trained a lot harder. And that's a fact. I mean, now you make a kid do 10 push-ups and the parents want to sue you. So that's the difference, I think.
Yep. I'll leave you a bad review. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay. Now, who were your heroes growing up in martial arts?
There was a gentleman by the name of Joe Hayes who was uh my hero. He trained, I was about a green belt, when I first met Joe Hayes. He was teaching at a center called the Alfred E. Smith Community Center in the projects and where I grew up at. And his work ethics was, it was incredible. He trained hard. I would sit there and watch him do hundreds upon hundreds of push-ups. And and he was a very quiet man, very strong, very athletic, and he was a karate champion. He actually trained with Bruce Lee. He actually taught Bruce Lee some kicks, especially the spin kick. He's a very popular back then, Joe Hayes. He trained under a gentleman by the name of Richard Chun. And I had the pleasure of watching him train. I never trained with him, but I had the honor of watching him train. And from watching him train, he became my hero. I pattern to this day my training method after him. The only one other person I remember train very similar to him. That was my instructor, Hector Martinez, who had very high standards for training too, and he put a lot of pressure on himself for training hard. And those two gentlemen were my martial arts heroes when I was coming up. I had many coming up, Ron Van Cleef, Ron Takanashi, Wilfredo Rodan, another gentleman by the name of Joseph Lopez. He was one of the very few guys that studied under Yamaguchi in Japan, and he had a school on 31 Park Row, Lower East Side, Manhattan, once again, right outside of Chinatown. Mm-hmm. And I used to go visit his school frequently. Never was a student of his, but I really admired him. I was more into guys that trained real hard. I never was impressed by instructors that looked out of shape, looked sloppy, but they give all the commands and yell and scream, but they sit down while the students do all the work. Right. I was never impressed by that. Even as a kid, I always gravitated to the guys that trained really, really, really hard. So every instructor I ever had trained very, very hard. So those two gentlemen, Joe Hayes and my instructor, Hector Martinez, were my two heroes coming up in martial arts.
Nice. All right, so we're going to stop right there. We're going to go into a quick commercial break, and we're going to come right back.